I think we all at this table believe nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed.
Finally, this is a historic moment that so many here and across the country have been working towards, to take this step to end America's destructive and costly war on drugs that has turned everyday Americans into criminals and torn families apart, ruining so many people's lives. This legislation removes cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act and frees states to regulate it as they choose, and encourages research into the medicinal qualities of this plant that we already know are changing people's lives and saving people's lives. The bottom line is this vote is about freedom. It's about freedom of choice for every American to make their own decisions for themselves without fear of the government coming and arresting them. I urge my colleagues to support this bill. The Senate should pass it quickly so we can send it to the president for his signature.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Audacious Money Witch channel, where we talk about investing and trading and a lot of fun things. It's official. US DEA will move to reclassify cannabis in a historic shift. Washington AP sources say, while it's happening, woo! This is the real deal, Holyfield. Like I said, my witchy spidey sense was tingling. I knew it would be in 2024. Both are happening for my Trulieve stock. Woohoo! Which right now just up 30% so far during the trading day, because we have the most anticipated news. We are all waiting for the federal rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3. For the first time, the Drug Enforcement Administration has called for botanical cannabis to be reclassified under federal law. Let's just jump into the piece from Washington AP. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration will move to reclassify Mary Jane as a less dangerous drug. The Associated Press has learned a historic shift to generations of American drug policy that could have a wide ripple effects across the country. The DEA's proposal, which still must be reviewed by the White House Office of Management and Budget, OMB, would recognize the medical uses of cannabis and acknowledge it has less potential for abuse than some of the nation's most dangerous drugs. However, it would not legalize Mary Jane outright for recreational use. The agency's move, confirmed to the AP on Tuesday by 5 people familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive regulatory review.
Expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession, because no one should be jailed for simply using or having on their record.
Clears the last significant regulatory hurdle before the agency's biggest policy change in more than 50 years can take effect. Once OMB signs off, the DEA will take public comment on the plan to move Mary Jane from its current classification as a Schedule 1 drug, alongside what Jesse Pinkman's girlfriend took and died from, and Mr. White's baby blue. It moves cannabis to Schedule 3 alongside ketamine and some anabolic steroids, following a recommendation from the Federal Health and Human Services Department. After the public comment period, the agency would publish the final rule. Commenting on the forthcoming decision, NORML Deputy Director Paul Armentano said, "It is significant for these federal agencies and the DEA and the FDA in particular to acknowledge publicly for the first time what many patients and advocates have known for decades, that cannabis is a safe and effective therapeutic agent for tens of millions of Americans." Armentano cautioned, however, that reclassifying cannabis as a Schedule 3 substance would not immediately address the growing chasm between federal law and the laws most states that currently regulate cannabis for either medical or adult use. It comes after President Joe Biden called for a review of federal Mary Jane law in October 2022 and moved to pardon thousands of Americans convicted federally for simple possession of the drug. He has also called on governors and local leaders to take similar steps to erase Mary Jane convictions. Criminal records for Mary Jane use and possession have imposed needless barriers to employment, housing, and educational opportunities, Biden said in December. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to Mary Jane. It's time that we right these wrongs. The election year announcement could help Biden, a Democrat, boost flagging support, particularly among younger voters. Schedule III drugs are still controlled substances and subject to rules and regulations, and people who traffic in them without permission could still face federal criminal prosecution. Some critics argue the DEA couldn't change course on Mary Jane, saying rescheduling isn't necessary and could lead to harmful side effects. On the other end of the spectrum, others say cannabis should be dropped from the controlled substances list completely and instead regulated like alcohol. Federal drug policy has lagged behind many states in recent years, with 38 having already legalized medical Mary Jane and 24 legalizing its recreational use. That's helped fuel fast growth in the cannabis industry with an estimated worth of nearly $30 billion. Easing federal regulations could reduce the tax burden that can be 70% or more for businesses. According to industry groups, it could also make it easier to research Mary Jane, since it's very difficult to conduct authorized clinical studies on Schedule I substances. The DEA's rescheduling decisions, once formalized, does not take immediate effect. The agency must first attempt public comments, during which time interested parties can formally request administrative hearings to further debate the issue. Only following public comments and a possible judicial review will the agency issue its final determination. Changes in Mary Jane's federal status will then take effect 30 days following publication of the DEA's final rule in the Federal Register. The immediate effect of rescheduling on the nation's criminal justice system would likely be more muted, since federal prosecutions for simple possession have been fairly rare in recent years. Biden has already pardoned thousands of Americans convicted of possessing Mary Jane under federal law. Goodman reported from Miami, "It's all good, man." Do you know what else? The freaking chart of Trulieve stock predicted this move. Want to look at the chart of Trulieve? This data point came from April 29th. This chart pattern is called a continuation wedge. It's a bullish pattern. It represents a temporary interruption to an uptrend, taking the shape of two converging trend lines, both slanted downward against the trend. During this time, the bears attempt to win over the bulls. In the end, the bulls triumph as the break above the upper trend line signals a continuation of the prior uptrend. It has a target price of $18.50 to $19.40. The pattern duration is 17 days to play out. But when it comes to cannabis, when you are high, it's really high. We are going there day one. We have been waiting for this day to happen for years now. Honestly, some of us have waited longer, but at least on this channel, we have been talking about it for 7 months now. And today, it just has the Associated Press confirming that the DEA will reschedule 3 cannabis. People might ask, how official is this Associated Press? AP Today remains the most trusted source of fast, accurate, unbiased news in all formats since 1846. I mean, if this was not true, the MSOS wouldn't be up 22% right now. Tilray wouldn't be up a whopping 40% right now. Canopy growth is now up an unbelievable 78% right now. So, now what? Well, like I said, because stocks like Canopy, which sell most of its Mary Jane products in Canada, it's federally legal so that they can be listed on NASDAQ. However, ironically, they are not in the US market, which explains the big fund money that is now so desperate to get in. They want to get into cannabis so much, so they are coming to Canada. Who doesn't want a 30% to 70% upside move in a day? Do you know this is just the start of the show? Woohoo! Wait until the day the DEA finally announces it and then the president announces it for Trulieve. We also have Florida's recreational ballot that is going to be voted on in November. This is something you don't want to miss out on. That is why I told you to get in early, as I took the opportunity to buy more of my Trulieve stock when it drops to 13 to 14 range just a couple of days ago, because I know the question is when and not if for this election year. We know that rescheduling of cannabis would be some significant milestone for drug policy reform in the US, as it paves the way for the establishment of a federally legal medical cannabis industry. It's not the best scenario, but it's better than nothing happening. At least we can get the ball rolling. My understanding is 280E issues go away with rescheduling. A lot of the immediate problems, especially with legal businesses operating in a legal manner, a lot of those issues go away. So that's a great first step, and I fully support it. Then the next catalyst is the Safer Banking Act. Republicans that represent purple districts overwhelmingly support SAFE and then some. And so if Republicans want to keep the House, it's a good bill to have on the floor. Right now, this industry employs as many as 500,000 jobs. In the event that we receive rescheduling, you could have another 100,000 jobs basically added to the overall industry. This is something that the US Gov could tax, which states badly need right now. It's a big economic engine. Then our Trulieve stock will be uplisted to NASDAQ, and then we will have an IPO sort of day, and our stock will be worth even more. Woo!
And so, we are very hopeful and looking forward to an official announcement by the DEA that they do in fact agree and concur with HHS, and that they too are making the recommendation for a rescheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. So that means that cannabis would be on the same level as, for example, Tylenol with codeine. And then finally, and importantly for our industry and for my business, is that it would put us in a normalized tax bracket. Currently, state-regulated, state-authorized cannabis companies pay, in some cases, 50% tax rate. And so it would allow us to take those dollars and invest them into our companies for job growth and for additional, research that we could do as well to better the industry.
And so, Kim, so important potential sort of impacts here in terms of research and taxes. I was also reading, Kim, this could potentially spur more moves in Congress. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's certainly our hope. As many who follow the industry know, that we have been stalled in Congress in getting past the safer banking bill, which would, again, we're talking about normalization. So that's really, we're on a quest for normalization as a business and as an industry. And so that would level the playing field as it relates to banking, and importantly, would allow for us to potentially take credit cards, so we wouldn't have to have as much cash on hand, which makes us a target, of course, for crime, and there have been some horrific reports of robberies that have happened in dispensaries across the country, and also would allow us to have access to banking tools. So loans, when we think about small businesses, minority-owned businesses, being able to really compete in this industry, having access to those banking tools that incentivize those businesses to get off the ground. So lots of implications we think here, and really an important and critical first domino to fall if in fact it does come to fruition. And again, that's one of the things that we were so excited about with this process, is that we now actually have FDA-backed data points where we can have a more robust, scientifically backed conversation about what cannabis is and what it is not, and again, begin to develop a more thoughtful and comprehensive regulatory regime that can be rolled out eventually, right, nationally. The scales are beginning to tip here, and it's great to see that hopefully the federal government is entering the conversation in a more meaningful way.